What's going on, everybody? Thank you for clicking on to the fourth episode of the It Gets Better podcast. Today, my guest is Chris from the channel VettedGames, and your topic is actually a little bit different than, I guess, what I've been talking to my other guests about, and that is life in the Marine Corps. So, I guess where I want to start the conversation is, what were you like before you joined the Marines, and what was the impetus for enlisting?
So, when before I had joined the Marine Corps, and hello everyone, and thank you for having me.
Yeah.
But before joining the Marine Corps, I had recently dropped out of college for the third time, second time,
Dang.
third time. And a lot of it came down to money. I could not pay for college. I originally tried going to CW Post. I was pursuing a criminal justice degree. It didn't work out. I didn't have enough money to pay $20,000 a year for, and I was like, let me go to community college. And then I go to community college, and I was able to pay for like the first semester or two. But again, just at the time, this was back in 2010. The economy still wasn't really doing that well, and we kept on getting laid off. And I was working for Rosetta Stone at the time,
Nice.
and it was actually a really cool experience. I was a salesman in Long Island, but I would jump back and forth from like Times Square to Grand Central Station to Roosevelt Field Mall, and just whatever it is, I can sell you a $500 box.
Yeah.
I got to make that money somehow. And we were working off of commission. So there was times where the money was good, and then there was times where the money was bad. And ultimately, my home store was closing down in Huntington Station.
Yeah.
And they were just like, look, we really like you. We want to make you an assistant manager. However, the only position that's available to you is to go to Grand Central Station. And I was just like, I don't have $300 a month for me to constantly go back and forth, because if we're not selling, there's nothing that's guaranteed.
Yeah.
So I needed to find another gig. And as we were in the middle of closing the store, it took about a month to close. I contacted a recruiter. It was always in the back of my mind that, I wanted to join the Marine Corps, but both my parents were hippies, and my dad was a Vietnam vet who had a really bad experience out there. And he was just like, no, don't join the Marine Corps, or don't join the military. And I just ended up pulling the trigger. And when I went into the recruiting station, they're always talking about looking for people that are motivated, that want to better themselves, that want to serve their country. And I literally was just like, look, you don't have to sell me the spiel. I need money. I need health insurance. I need a job.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes, I'm here to sign my life away. And it was really easy for him.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges going into it was that I was pretty overweight. I was a wrestler when I was in high school. And I had stopped wrestling when I got into college, because the type of wrestling that I was doing wasn't like, high school wrestling where it's like you go to events and shit like that.
Yeah.
It was like the shit that you see on WWE.
Okay.
There was an organization called PWR, and it was connected to our church, and we would wrestle for them. But once I stopped wrestling for them, I got pretty fat, I guess you could say. And then my first hurdle was to lose about 80 pounds so that I can ship.
So quick question for
Sure.
those of us who are like lay people. I guess, one, why the Marines? And then, as a lay person, I feel like there's a difference between the military, so like Army, Navy, what have you, and the Marines. So can you kind of speak to like why you chose to be a Marine, and what in particular sets a Marine apart from someone who's in the, like, I guess, traditional Army?
So when you talk to a Marine, you ask them what they are. You're just like, I'm a Marine. I'm a fucking Marine. You go to somebody that's in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, they say, I'm a soldier, I'm an airman, I'm a sailor. Right?
Yeah.
It's just part of their job. When you ask a Marine, what are you? It's like, I'm a fucking Marine. I'm a fucking killer. I
Yeah.
slay bodies every single day. It doesn't matter that I'm admin. I'm a fucking killer at heart.
Yeah.
They say that every single Marine is a rifleman first and foremost. Your job is to go out into combat and kill. Everything else is secondary. There's a lot of pride that goes into the creation and the holding of the title Marine, because the way that we view it, our life, we didn't join the Marine Corps, or from what they say, we don't join or stay in the Marine Corps because it's easy. We do it because it's hard. And because we're hard, we earn that title Marine. That's where that pride comes from.
So, how do you, while we're talking about it, now that you're
Mhm.
out of the military, did you leave the active duty Marines with a community? Do you still talk with people? Do you exercise or drill with people? Like, what's it like post enlistment?
So I've managed to build up a little bit of a community. All my friends still keep in touch with each other. You
Okay.
know, I can call them up at any time and they'll be able to give me advice. I mean, give me money, even though I don't ask for money. It's just like they're always there to help you out, to hook you up. Um, my reasoning for getting out was actually a medical related reason. I was going to stay in, however, I would not be able to progress um, and sustain a lifestyle that would be beneficial for my family had I stay in.
So, okay. So you said health, which is a good way for us to go back. So your first challenge was that you needed to lose weight.
Right.
How did you do? How did you accomplish that?
I was eating just shredded carrots and I was on the treadmill or the elliptical for 9 hours a day at my recruiter station.
And did that
And
have like a detrimental effect on your health?
oh, it definitely made me like all the water in my body was drained out and I shipped at 180 pounds.
Damn.
But yeah, but the thing is, it's just like I didn't have like any muscle mass. I was just skin and bones on this wide frame body. And I mean, it was very difficult for me starting to get in. And then by the time you're in boot camp, that's just a total other challenge in and of itself. I mean, when you go to boot camp, you're going there, and what their intention is to do is they're trying to strip the individuality out of you and make everyone in your platoon a cohesive unit. Because when you go out to combat, it's not about you, the individual, it's about mission accomplishment. And the only way that you can accomplish the mission is by working together as a team.
So I wonder, in learning how to, I guess, be outside yourself to work for a goal greater than yourself. Did that actually help you back in your civilian life
After
find a
getting
sense of
out,
identity? Yeah.
so to be honest, I haven't quite left the Marine Corps. I'm currently working as a civilian, government federal civilian, with Marines, but it's kind of like just another day in the office, another day doing what I've been doing for the last 7 years. I'm just not working as active duty military. I'm not required to PT. I'm not required to go weigh in or wear a uniform. I can come in just pretty much wearing whatever I want. But when we go in and we go to do the work, you know,
Yeah.
it's just like what I've been doing.
So, okay. So let's focus on boot camp, right? So you come
Sure.
in and you probably aren't in the best shape. You like you
No,
said, shredded carrots, water is out of you, no muscle mass. So
no
I
muscle.
I imagine that was stressful in that you had a new environment, you had a new set of expectations, you weren't physically healthy. So what did you do during that time to correct yourself?
So boot camp was probably one of the most challenging things for me because I was very much like I was an individual. I only cared about myself, everything, because that's the way that I grew up. I
Yeah.
didn't, play on team-based sports. I wrestled. Everything was on me. In school, I did everything on my own. I paid my way to go to high school and to college. I come from a very poor background. So when you're finally telling me and you have drill instructors screaming in your face, that you have to start working as a team and I'm getting punished for the things that other people are doing, you kind of start to snap.
Yeah.
90% of boot camp is mental. The 10% physical thing, that's just gravy. It comes with it. And while it is physically challenging and it requires a lot out of your body, everything comes down to your mental fortitude. And that was a huge hurdle for me because I had to stop thinking for myself and start thinking for the people that are around me.
And
Uh,
just to be clear, because like
mhm.
a lot of my other guests have, uh, some kind of depression or anxiety disorder. There was nothing wrong with you. You're just like a normal person taking on a new challenge in your life, right?
Um, I would say so. I haven't been clinically diagnosed with depression or anxiety or anything like that. If I were to be diagnosed, I don't know if they would find something if whatnot, but I think I'm just a normal person just trying to make it in life.
I gotcha. No, that I mean that's awesome. So what what did it feel like to add that new way of thinking to your identity, to think for others and work as a team? Like, what was the go ahead.
I it was a battle. It was absolutely a battle, especially at first because I didn't want to take responsibility for someone else's fuck ups.
Yeah.
That's just what it comes down to. And drill instructors don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
They'll start pulling everybody out to the quarter deck and just start, smoking you out. And I don't know if do you know what I mean by that? It means like, drill instructors are taking you, they're putting you in a sand pit, they're making you do exercises, push-ups, sit-ups, all that shit for anywhere between 3 minutes to 15 minutes in the hot 120-degree weather of South Carolina. So I mean, it sucks.
Yeah.
But it's through those experiences that builds unit cohesion. There's a saying that says misery breeds of course, right when I'm on the spot I'm going to forget the thing. Misery breeds company.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So we're all in this situation where it fucking sucks and we can't do anything to fight it. We might as well just get along and get the job done. And eventually that's what ends up happening. Like once we're getting into our second and third phases, we're learning how to trust each other, even though we may not necessarily like each other, but we're learning how to trust each other and do our job so that we as a team succeed. And that was a big thing for me because I never had that opportunity to do something that was team oriented. And it's quite rewarding when everyone's hard work comes together and you succeed.
So, okay, you said something about phases. So, um the only way I would know how to interpret that is with like my jujitsu stuff. You have
Mm-hmm.
like degrees of black belt, which essentially at that point are kind of saying how many years you've been at it and then to a lesser degree what you know. So for someone who's not been in the Marine Corps, um what are the phases?
So first phase is just like your boot ass recruit. You don't know shit. They make you wear your uniform kind of fucked up. And the first phase is really trying to hamper down on your break your individuality. They're trying to break you so they can build you back up. And it sucks. It's the most miserable time of your fucking life. And you constantly are getting screamed at. You're constantly getting like being escorted to and from other areas. Like even when you're sitting down and you're eating, you only have like 3 minutes to finish your meal. And then after that, you're going back outside and you're going back to go drill or you're going back to train or you're going back to do knowledge lessons and shit like that. Your second phase is really focused in on your ability to fight in combat.
Yeah.
So that's when you go to the rifle range. That's when you qualify. That's when you're also working together as a team. They have you do team week where you do certain tasks around the base, and that's like free labor for the base pretty much. But it teaches people to accomplish a mission no matter how small the task is. And then third phase is when the transformation from civilian to Marine finally takes place, and you know you're certifying all of your um of course I'm going to mess it up now. You're pretty much testing out of all of the things that you've been learning for the last 8 weeks. It's in your boot camp's like 13 weeks. So you spend the first 4 weeks in phase 1, next 4 weeks in phase 2, and then the last 5 weeks in phase 3. And that phase 3 is when you're testing out, you're doing your McMap, you're doing your martial arts, you're doing your final PFT, you're doing your final CFT, and then finally it all culminates to the Crucible. And the Crucible is 72 hours straight where you're just on the go doing mock battle missions. And during those mock battle missions, you can perform the mission and then you learn a lesson. So for example, there'll be a mission that was, you have to low crawl from point A to point B, and that area could be like a half mile that you have to low crawl to.
Yeah.
And you hear like, gunfire going off and bombs going off and shit like that. And by the time that you reach the end, you got to go, you take a magazine, you have to go shoot the targets down there. And then you finally come together and it was like, okay, cool. You just reenacted an event that took place in World War II where so-and-so was awarded the Medal of Honor. And it was his bravery and his self-sacrifice that, saved the lives of his men and accomplished the mission.
Yeah.
And there's lessons like that throughout the entire Crucible. And it's grueling. It's hard, especially for us because the heat index for us was like 130 degrees. So we didn't have a whole lot of water, we didn't have a whole lot of food, and we didn't have a whole lot of sleep. But we still had to push through and complete the test, so to say.
So what was the transition from, I guess the right way to say this is completing your Crucible and becoming a Marine to serving duty, where you weren't in active combat? I think you said earlier you were admin.
So my job, when I entered the Marine Corps, I was originally supposed to be a combat engineer. And when they received my test scores, we have this test called the ASVAB that tests, how smart are you and what areas that you excel in. I had a really high GT score, and they were just like, hey, we want you to test out for intelligence. We want you to be like a linguist or some shit like that. And I go and I take the test and I do really well. Going back to what I was saying earlier, from when I was going to school, I had a lot of school debts and I had actually defaulted on one of my loans. And for that reason, I could not get a top secret security clearance. So they were just like, you're going in open contract. You're just going to take whatever we give you. And at the time, they were saying anyone that was open contract was going to go infantry. And I was just like, okay, fine, fuck it, whatever.
Yeah.
By the time that we ended boot camp and they were finally giving us our MOSs, they gave me like this financial management resource analyst type bullshit. So I'm just like,
no, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask. So, I mean, here you are, you're kind of in a desperate situation, no money for school, you're trying to find some stability, and like you said, like, I'm here, I'm going to do whatever it takes to, reach my end goals. So you go through this intense training and you're just beat the fuck down only to be assigned a financial analyst role, right? So were you disappointed? Like how
I was extremely disappointed. Because like who joins the Marine Corps to crunch numbers? Who joins the Marine Corps to sit at a desk and just, pay people out, do contracts? It was a far cry from what I expected the Marine Corps to be. I thought I was that I was going to go fight. I thought that I was going to go do things, especially in an environment that the Marine Corps is in currently. Yeah. Like, we call ourselves post 9/11 veterans. And the significance of that is that people who are not post 9/11, like way on back, they were drafted in. They didn't have a choice. So you get people that are coming into the armed services that are not, mentally prepared or their heart is not fully in it.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily wanting to go fight. Every single person that joins the Marine Corps or joins the armed forces post 9/11 went in with an intention or the acknowledgement that I could possibly die fighting for my country, and I am A-okay with that.
So, how do you reconcile your training against your disappointment? And to kind of like hone in on that, you're broken down and rebuilt such that you have to put your mission or your objectives before yourself. So, how did you use your training to accept your assignment and make the best of it?
I think that comes with a little bit of maturity. I was much older than my peers. Most people who join the military are like 18, 19 years old. I was 22 by the time I joined the Marine Corps.
Okay.
And
Is that late?
That's pretty late. I mean, average person in my platoon getting out of boot camp was about 18, 19. And then I was the oldest. I was the second oldest in my platoon. There was one other guy that was 26 years old, and he was right at the cutoff. So, but I mean, once I got out, once I did my A school, once I learned my MOS, and I got dropped down to my unit, I just had to sit down and look at myself in the mirror and say, this is just the way that life took me. And I came here to make the best of it and be the best person I could possibly be. You know, I came from nothing and I now have something.
Yeah.
Like I came from a broken home. My father was a heroin addict. My mother, you know, worked for pennies on the dollar for a church. She was an ordained minister. We had nothing. And I now have something. I'm going to do whatever I can to retain this. And, you know, it got me, you know, it gave me a chance for me to build my family, to build my career. And, you know, even though I'm personally disappointed by where it has taken me, you know, I'm just going to do the best I can.
Yeah. So, what was your relationship with your family like throughout all this? And did it make it any harder for you to do what you needed to do?
I have an estranged relationship with my family. When I talk about my family, I refer to my wife and my child.
Okay.
Extended, I don't talk to many people. And I guess you could say that that's made things easy. That made things really easy because I don't have a lot of loose ends. You know, I don't have to tie any loose ends, so to say.
So, how did you end up? I mean, I imagine you met your wife during your enlistment.
No, actually, I met her when I was in college. So when I was in community college, we had met. We had started dating, kind of like on the DL, and just I had a few blowouts with my mother. She didn't agree with the quote unquote lifestyle that I was living, which was not very Christian. I came from a very hardcore fundamentalist evangelical Christian background.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to live my life and, you know, try to be successful. And if the church was not involved, it wasn't acceptable. So I ended up getting kicked out of the house when I guess I should say 19. I was 19 years old when I got kicked out of the house. And I moved in with her and we tried to make it work, but financially we just couldn't make it. We were losing the apartment, we were losing the house.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had to pull the trigger on something. So I joined the Marine Corps. And with time, once I was able to, she moved out with me and we just made it work.
So I imagine you waited until after your service to have children.
Tail end. Like once I knew that I was getting out, or, you know, I wasn't going to go deploy or anything like that. Once I knew that all those chances have gone and went, that's when I was like, okay, let's start having kids.
So I kind of wonder how did like joining up actually affect your relationship? Because it seems like on the one hand, it would be a boon to your relationship because now you're able to bring some stability in the form of like money, a steady job, you know, there are benefits that come with being in the military, like healthcare and, discounts everywhere. But at the same time, it sounds like it could have taken you away from her. So, like, how did that affect your relationship?
You're kind of on the nose with that. Before joining, it was kind of stressful between the two of us. She didn't want me to go.
Yeah.
She was just like, let's figure something else out. And my wife is a very capable and intelligent woman. She has a trade job that can take her pretty much anywhere, and she was willing to be the breadwinner for the family.
Yeah.
But it wasn't enough for me. I'm kind of on the ambitious side, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes for me to be successful.
So,
So, mhm.
so can you give us an idea of how you managed that emotional situation? Because I'm not sure a lot of people are able to. I mean, I'm not even to, because I haven't been in your shoes. What kind of emotional intelligence it takes to navigate a, I mean, correct me if I'm misspeaking, but a, rough relationship, and then stack on top of that you yourself are being beaten down and that you're being taken away for this training. So, like, what did you have to do to not only maintain but then put in the effort to, I guess, fix or make your relationship better with your wife?
The key to any relationship is communication. As you know, you can be the best of friends, which we are. We love each other wholeheartedly. We are each other's best friend. But in order for anything to work, there has to be a string of communication. And we had to be upfront. We didn't hide anything, even our feelings on certain things. But we also have to acknowledge that, we have to take certain actions in order for us to survive or be successful. In boot camp, there wasn't really a day that went by that I didn't take an opportunity to write home to her, and
Yeah.
vice versa. I mean, there was still always an open line of communication which every now and then would be not available due to me being in the field or me doing certain training events, but the effort was always there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in order for any relationship to work out, you have to be willing to be completely candid with your spouse, but at the same time also, think in her shoes. You have to have her best interests or his best interests in mind when you make certain decisions, because every single decision that you make, especially coming from the position of the military member, is going to affect everyone's life in your immediate family.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I guess so you say communication is key. Like, did you ever have any difficulty, or did your wife ever have any difficulty having the hard conversations, or is that just something that, like, happened naturally because y'all were oh, go ahead.
The We were really open with each other. I mean, the hard conversations came in the form of, the moves, the possible deployments, the desire to have children, and then what to do. What are we going to do if I get out? What do I do if I stay in? What's going to happen if I change my job? Because all of these things were on the table. I would say that for 90% of my enlistment, I was pursuing the possibility of changing my job to do something that I was more interested in. To the point where I relocated to be attached to a special operations unit with the hopes of me joining that special operations unit as a critical skills operator.
So it sounds like a lot of what y'all were discussing is kind of like fear of the future type things. We want this for ourselves later, and this immediate situation might have some impact on that.
Correct.
So how did y'all navigate that?
Again, we just talked about it.
And you
A
didn't need
lot
to
of it.
do. No, go ahead.
Sorry.
Well, and so I'm just kind of wondering, because, like, I think a lot of my listeners who are probably dealing with anxiety and depression, they're probably in a very short term or like short-sighted frame of mind.
Hmm.
And I wonder if you're able to give them any insight. Obviously communication is key, but how did you handle these things internally? Are there things you had to tell yourself? Did you decide that you were going to create like milestone goals to maybe better envision your future and work towards what you want? Or was it literally in your case just I told my wife, hey, I might get moved, excuse me if this is sounds like complete gibberish or anything, but I might get moved or relocated based off this assignment I might get, and then just hash it out from there.
You're not far off with the milestone thing. The way that I view things is a lot like video games because I'm just a huge fucking nerd.
Yeah.
Um, in order for you to beat the game, in order for you to get to the end goal, you have to complete certain milestones. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you cannot move forward, or you're going to be heavily at a disadvantage when you reach that end game. So everything that I did, I set small milestones for myself. I had like small little goals for me, and it's divided between both at work and at home. I needed to be the best husband I could possibly be. So when I'm at home, I'm paying attention to my wife. I'm always checking in with her. I'm talking with her. I'm making sure that all the things that she wants and she desires and she needs are being met at a reasonable amount. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't give her everything, but you can do your best. If it's within your reach, you can do your best. And the important thing is that she at the same time was trying to be the best wife that she can be. So when we both have our goals aligned with each other,
Yeah.
it's, you're working in tandem.
So it sounds like the takeaways from this are setting reasonable goals, whatever that is to you personally. Set reasonable goals or milestones to help you envision and then execute on the vision of your life. Keep open and honest communication, and then just put in the work. Be present, be conscious, make it happen.
Exactly.
Okay, so you've attempted school, failed multiple times. You join the Marines. You, through sheer grit, drop your weight, make it in, get through boot camp. You're married, and now I guess you're serving. When did you start going back to school, or have you not?
So when I was stationed in Miramar, California, I was attached to Group 37, Marine Air Wing Group 37. Um, and I would started taking some classes here and there. I was trying to major as a math major. Um, I only took a few classes because my focus was not necessarily on being the best student, but being the best Marine. So I was trying to get my belt up in McMap. I was trying to sign up for every single deployment opportunity that I had. I was trying to, learn from my NCOs everything I could be, everything I could in being a better Marine as a leader and in my MOS. So, learning advanced techniques that you weren't necessarily learn as a young private PFC, that the responsibilities would normally fall on like a staff sergeant or a captain.
And what
Um,
so what did that
go
look
ahead.
like? Were you enrolled in a local institution? Does the military provide accredited education that transfers throughout the country? Like, what did your college experience look like during this time?
My, my college experience, I was going to National University, and it was, night classes. I would go 1 or 2 nights a week, and a lot of the people that were going at the time were also other military members. So we all go. We were all motivated. We were all there to learn. We just did the job done. We just got the job done. As far as you know, me being a Marine, it was spending a lot of time with my fellow Marines and my NCOs, learning from my NCOs.
What's an
And
NCO?
non-commissioned officer. So the rank structure for the enlisted is the junior enlisted would be your privates, your private first classes, and your lance corporals. And within that small structure of ranks, as you rank up, there are more responsibilities that are put on you because you're being trained to become non-commissioned officers so that you can have your own platoon or your own, fire team to look after and teach and mentor and lead. So
So it's safe to say that an NCO is someone who doesn't typically carry a gun, and like you said earlier, they might be trained to kill, but their first responsibility is not to go out onto the field, it's to lead others on the field.
no, that's not what it is.
Okay.
So if we're going to look at the infantry format, your platoon leader, your platoon sergeant is a sergeant, and he is the one that is directing his platoon to go to combat, right? And underneath him, he's got his corporals, he's got his squad leaders and whatnot. And each squad leader would have normally like 10 or 12 Marines underneath him. Hold on, excuse me. And then underneath him, he'd have his fire team leaders would either be like corporals or lance corporals. And those are Marines that, have seniority, or have those leadership traits that they can trust those Marines to lead the other batch of Marines underneath them. So no, they fight. They're on the front lines, whether it's, in Afghanistan or if it's in the office. They're leading the charge.
So it sounds like there's a delineation in rank and responsibility, but your training is the same.
Yes.
Okay.
And more often, I mean, when you are a non-commissioned officer, you're more often giving that training because you already went through that time learning. It's time for you to teach. The learning never really goes away because there's always going to be somebody that's above you teaching you and mentoring you. In the Marine Corps, there's this really big emphasis on the mentorship program, so to say. Every single person has a mentor, every single person has a mentee. So even me, when I was a sergeant, I had a gunnery sergeant that I gleaned all of my knowledge and information and leadership traits off of. Meanwhile, I had my own group of Marines. I had about 8 Marines underneath me that they were my responsibility. I was teaching them. I was telling them, this is what you do in these circumstances. This is what you do in combat. This is what you do when you're doing your job. This is how you live your life to be an upstanding member of society and to be a proper representation of the Marine Corps.
So I almost think this question might be unnecessary, but I wonder, what is there for you to learn from an NCO? Like, what is the value of their counsel, given that, if I understand this correctly, you would be going out into combat directly, while this other person might take more of an executive, like a strategically executive type role? Is it that you're learning how to think more broadly or creatively, or like what does it look like when you learn from an NCO?
So let's first talk about the learning aspect of it.
Okay.
When you're working with your NCO, I mean, we're dealing with somebody that's probably been in the service for about 2 or 3 years already, and has already learned the basics, has already learned the ropes,
Yeah.
and he has been given the responsibility of leading Marines underneath him. When he leads those Marines, he's teaching them all the knowledge that he knows. And when it's time to go to combat, he's out there with his Marines leading the charge in his fire team. I mean, examples would be like fucking Corporal Dunham going out into combat when they were in Iraq, and they were hooking and jabbing, fighting insurgents and whatever. and a guy comes out of nowhere, tries to pull a grenade out and you know blow up the fire team,
Yeah.
and it's Corporal Dunham that goes out, takes charge, takes the lead, tackles this dude down, and sacrifices his life by covering the grenade with his own body to save the lives of his Marines. It's not necessarily like the differences between being a supervisor or an executive. You are pretty much a monument of morality and leadership to these Marines for them to learn and emulate.
Okay. So, would you say that you learn ethics from these people?
Absolutely.
So, and I hate how much time we have to discuss this because I feel like there's
I
a
mean, if you want
lot.
to go over, we can go over. I'm here.
Well, I want to kind of glaze the surface of it now, at least, but I
Sure.
really would like to have you back again to have a more in depth conversation about this.
Yeah.
But how how are you taught to rationalize indiscriminate killing? Like, if you were enlisted right now
hmm
and your CO said, "Hey, you need to go execute Spooky Pete," you would just have to do that.
That's not really how it works.
Okay, so how does it work?
So when we're, it's not necessarily, if you were considered a high value target, there would be decisions made on high from, generals and other analysts and think tanks and whatever.
Yeah.
And they turned around and said, Spooky Pete is a high value target. He needs to be taken out. What are the reasons why? Well, we know that, Spooky Pete, for example, is a bomb maker. He has been assisting such and such terrorist groups, uh, yada, yada, yada. We need to take him out so that we can stifle the pipeline of explosives being sent out to other insurgencies. Yeah, okay, yeah, let's do this. Let's go get this guy. Or it could be Spooky Pete is a high value target because he has a wealth of knowledge on the inner workings of X insurgency organization. Yeah, let's go capture this guy and then interrogate him or do whatever it takes. It's not so much of just like, let the bodies hit the floor, man. It's
Yeah.
not like you go in and just like take out the village or whatever. And I mean, let's be real. There are examples of that taking place, and it certainly isn't legal most of the time. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I would say that an example where you can say that there is the threat of quote unquote indiscriminate killing would be the Battle of Fallujah. In 2004, the Battle of Fallujah, the Marines circled around the entire city of Fallujah, and they knew that Al Qaeda was deep in that city. And they waited, I don't know if they waited a month or a week or whatever, but they had to drop flyers into the city saying, you need to leave now because we're coming in and we will do whatever it takes to take out Al Qaeda. If you're there, you're running the risk of being killed. And
So,
then,
yeah,
mhm.
so it sounds like there are justifications made for any kind of killing, and that if there's a risk to the civilian population in the area where you're going to be operating, y'all do something to kind of let them know ahead of time, yo, shit's going down and this is where it's getting serious. So
Yeah.
risk
I
it or
mean,
bail.
there's like situations where insurgencies or terrorist organizations will use the civilian populace as cover because we can't shoot on civilians. We're not allowed to. We'll take enemy fire and start bitching at people to see if they can turn around and flank them or find a way to tackle them, but we can't shoot innocent civilians. That's just not how it goes down.
Yeah. Well, then I guess how do you know?
How
Like,
do I know that does not goes down?
no. Like, how do you differentiate between, you know what? Actually, let's just that's totally that's like a side dish. So, how do you I mean, how are you taught ethics in this situation? Because you know you're about to do the ultimate thing and in someone's life, and I wonder how you reconcile your duty something you swear an oath to do faithfully against your personal sense of like ethics and morality, because like you said, you came from a very like strict Christian home, and I don't know if Christian values, thou shall not kill or what have you, like raised off on you. So like what was that like for you to
So let's clear something up. I have never been in a situation where I needed to shoot somebody.
Okay.
Let's get that out of the way. When I speak about this, I'm speaking about from the stance of what I would do or potentially would do in that situation, and what my brothers have done in that situation.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
It goes down like this. If I'm being shot at, I have absolutely no problem shooting the other person.
Right. Reasonable.
Because it's my life on the line versus theirs.
Yeah.
If it's a situation of a raid, there is a lot of training that is involved with making sure you're not shooting innocents in the middle of the raid. They go over the same motions over and over and over and over again. They have people that work as, actors or body doubles or whatever to make sure that the mission pops off cleanly. That happens all the time. So people go in there knowing what it is that they have to do. Now, do mistakes take place? Absolutely. People fuck up all the time. And sometimes those people pay for it, whether it's, you have to do something for the village, or if someone just popped off real bad and that person has to get court-martialed or whatever.
Yeah.
It is what it is. As far as me rationalizing whether or not I need to shoot somebody, if my life is in danger, that's a big... Now, let's flip the switch a little bit. Let's talk about Chris Kyle.
I don't know.
Chris Kyle was... Okay, so Chris Kyle was a Navy SEAL in Afghanistan, and one of the big parts of his life that he reflects back to is the decision that he had to shoot a child because he was carrying around an explosive towards other Marines.
Yeah.
How do you justify that?
I mean, I feel like the fallback logic there would be like the few for the many.
Yeah, I mean... The way that I would see it, and it's a really shitty way of looking at it, but the way that I would have to engage with that is, I am here with my team to perform a mission. It is my job and duty to make sure my men come home. And if that means that I have to shoot this child who's carrying explosives with the intention of killing these service members, I have to go ahead and do that. That could follow me for the rest of my life. And it followed Chris Kyle for the rest of it. So, I mean, that's war, man.
So do you consider yourself lucky that you haven't had to make these kinds of decisions?
I don't know. Because if we go back to our conversation, it's what I wanted. But, life took me in a different direction.
Yeah.
And, you could speculate for what for. Maybe I wouldn't have been good out. Maybe I would have been really good out there, and that would have been a problem. You don't know.
So
I can... Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, so we're coming up on the end of our time, and I kind of wanted to flash forward. First of all, I definitely want to have you back to talk about this more, because I feel like there's some value in a Marine being able to explain the, ethical demands of their work and kind of everything that goes along with that. But let's flash forward to where you are right now. So you are obviously married. You have children now, right?
I do.
Okay. So did joining the Marines, obviously the work you did in the Marines was not what you wanted to do, but would you say that having that experience set you up for the kind of life that you wanted? And the reason I ask this is because I think, at least in popular media, there's this idea that our veterans aren't being taken care of. While yes, they typically get preferential treatment, like veteran status for jobs, or discounts out and about. There's usually things like having trouble getting tuition money, VA, and the healthcare rigmarole around all that. So would you say that you're having trouble with those kinds of things, or has it been what you expected it to be?
I'll say this. I am extremely fortunate to be in the situation that I am in.
And why do you say that?
As I said, because I am still technically part of the Marine Corps.
Okay.
I don't know what I would have done had I not been still in the employment of the Marine Corps. I must have done something real good to make someone happy enough to say, hey, we'll take you in as a civilian. When you take somebody out of an environment where there is structure, where they know where they're supposed to be at 8 o'clock, at 9 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, where they know what the mission is supposed to be. And you take them out of that environment and you put them in college or a regular civilian job where that structure just simply does not exist. They don't know what to do with themselves. We do not know what to do with ourselves. And we come back with experiences that 99% of the US population cannot fathom to understand. Even coming from a non-deployed pogue like me, person other than Grunt.
Yeah.
No one's going to understand the things that I have gone through, because there's a lot of things that I have gone through that just came with the whole military experience. I've had 2 suicides in my platoons, some under my watch, and it happens.
Yeah.
It's just an experience of life. How do I tell that to somebody that is in college, your average college student? How do I tell that to somebody who is like a coworker or a dude at the bar? Not everybody's going to be able to relate to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So you were saying, I don't want to misquote you, but you were kind of talking about the transition, and once that schedule disappears, that people might not know what to do. And I kind of wonder then how, I imagine when the baby is crying in the middle of the night, it's probably much easier for you as someone who has been conditioned to respond immediately to a variety of situations, to get up for your wife and take care of the child, versus your wife might be more stressed out by that because her body's not used to her body's not in the same condition mentally and physically as yours might be. So outside of, let's just say, manhood duties, I guess, how else has your training helped you in civilian life?
I would say that it made me a better leader, a more competent, let's say, analyst, because I work as an analyst of some sort.
Yeah.
When I look at a task, I may bitch and moan about it on the outside, but goddamn, I'm going to get that shit done.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what it is. I don't make excuses, and I try not to be lazy over it. I know that there is a mission available to me, and I do my damnedest to get it done. And you can take that from any Marine out there. When they know that they have a mission out there to do, they go out there and they fucking do it.
So what advice would you give to somebody who's considering joining the Marines for kind of what you talked about, the discipline and, I would say, the lifestyle benefits, at least in terms of having a paycheck, having a job, so on?
The Marine Corps, the benefits of joining the Marine Corps is not the benefits that you see on paper. They promise you money. It's not a whole lot of money. They promise you, a chance to see the world. everyone's experience is going to vary.
Yeah.
What you need to keep in mind when you join the Marine Corps is, are you mentally prepared to make sacrifices that you otherwise would never have to make? Whether it means, getting up at 2 a.m. to go to work, or coming to terms that you're going to go to combat and you might die. You may not come home. And whether that means like you have a wife and kid waiting for you at home and that they'll just end up being fatherless. I mean, as long as you are able to come to those terms and you are motivated to better yourself, then the Marine Corps would be the perfect choice for you, because the Marine Corps is made up of a group of people that work hard, that play hard, and get the job done. But the most rewarding thing about being in the Marine Corps is the community within itself. There is no better friend and no worse enemy than a United States Marine.
I can see that. I can definitely see that, especially after this conversation. So, I guess, where can people go to learn more about you and, what you're doing?
So, like I said, I'm a huge nerd. When I have my online persona, it's almost exclusively about video games. I talk about retro video games. I talk about current video games. And, I just like to bullshit. You can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/VettedGames. You can find us at YouTube at VettedGames. And we also have a podcast, a weekly podcast called the VettedGames Podcast, or the Vetted Podcast, depending on where you go. We are on Spotify. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher.
Okay, right on. So y'all are in all the right places. Well,
Yeah.
Sir, I appreciate it. At least for me, this was a very enlightening conversation, and I hope my listeners get something out of this. Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem, dude.